In other words, is this Stereolab's best album? Is Dots and Loops their most important album, or even maybe their most popular? So, first of all, for this segment, Ollie, I wanted to point out just how hard it is to answer this question with Stereolab. And there is a reason for that. And that reason is that their discography is just absolutely vast. To give you an example of exactly what I mean, the entire discography of Stereolab comprises, are you ready, Ol?
Go for it, lad.
13 studio albums, 7 compilation albums, 15 EPs, 16 singles, and 23 rarities compilations. That's 74 releases in total. So, to add to this pain, most of their albums have been reissued with expanded versions. So on Spotify, if you wanted to kind of try and get into Stereolab, which hopefully this podcast might let you do,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. There's so much music, so many compilations, all these singles and B-sides, and these albums aren't with their original dates. So it's so hard to make your way through it. But what do you think that reflects about Stereolab's way of making music, you think?
I think one thing that I'd say is, especially early on in their career, they were definitely quite a DIY indie band. If you think about what the word indie actually means, it means independent, separate from like a major label. And basically, when they started the band, Tim Gain wanted creative freedom and said, fuck it, we're going to launch our own label, and they called it Duophonic. They self-financed their first release, Super 45, and I think they had like 1,000 copies pressed. And basically, they just stuck them in a shopping trolley and walked around London, going to different record stores and just selling them, like they were selling strawberries or whatever. And even like after they'd had...
So it's a bit like when you come out of Camden Station and there's some bloke like outside just trying to flog his CDs.
Sorry, CDs. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, mate, I'm an MC, it's only £1. Yeah, that's crazy.
But then, even when they had a few releases under their belt, they'd continue painting, gluing all the vinyl records together. Which I guess there's quite an interesting quote from Tim about that. Basically, after In Rainbows was released by Radiohead, I think he was asked by a journalist, like, would you ever consider doing something like Radiohead have doing and like releasing music for free on the internet? And he kind of said, well, it would have to be a little bit more interesting for me to wholeheartedly get into that, because if you've been, like painting, gluing, pressing the records yourselves and like handing them out, I think uploading a bunch of MP3s to the internet would probably be a little bit dull by comparison.
It'd be heartbreaking, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Stereolab are one of those groups where I've spent quite a decent chunk of my life listening to them, but I don't think I've even scratched the surface. I feel like you send me a song like every other week by them that I've never heard before, that I like even more than the last one that you've sent me.
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing, just trying to get through all their rarities and all their little B-sides, because as you said, there's 23 rarity compilations, each with however many songs. You've got literally probably 1,000 Stereolab songs out there to release one way or another to get through, so there's a lot of music.
Because I think in terms of frequency of output, they're quite similar to the Smiths, who recorded and released a shitload of music, but they were only
as well.
Yeah, but they were only together for 5 years. Stereolab have been producing music for like nearly 4 times that amount of time, so there's obviously just way more music for fans to consume, which is obviously a good thing. But then the flip side of that is, if you hear about what the process was actually like in the studio, it sounds fairly remorseless. Apparently Tim Gain would just come to Sadier with like a bucket of 50 tracks and just be like, write lyrics please, and sing them. And then when they were in the studio, they'd have 35 tracks, do 35 drums, 35 bass, 35 keyboards, and just churn them out like an absolute factory, basically. And I know that Sadier had a problem with that. This kind of the not pondering on anything was what upset her, I think.
Yeah, because it's certainly like quite an unsentimental way of making music, isn't it? You record it all and then you release it, and then that's that, and you move on to the next thing. I can't imagine ever being able to do that without, as Sadier says, feeling, I want to ponder on this, I want to think about this thing I've just released. Anyway, to get back to the question at hand, it is Apex. What is Stereolab's best album? So as we mentioned earlier, Ollie, Dots and Loops basically jettisoned a lot of their trademark sounds, and it gives basically their whole discography in hindsight a rather dramatic sense of pre-Dots and Loops and post-Dots and Loops. So as a way of trying to help us to answer this Apex question, which is obviously quite difficult with Stereolab, if we take this moment, this album, to be the moment where the die is cast, the sound changes, from that krautrock lo-fi style to this futuristic lounge kind of style, Do you prefer their post or their pre Dots and Loops releases?
For me, if you're sending me to a desert island, I can only have one of the two. I'm going with the early albums, which isn't to say that I don't like the group from 97 onwards, because I really, really like Cobra Phases. That's a brilliant album. Dots and Loops is fantastic, and I like Sound Dust as well. For me, I actually like the fact that they've changed so much, but you can always tell that it's them. It just feels like on each album, they're exploring like different areas, different nooks and crannies of the Stereolab universe, if you like. And maybe this is wildly optimistic, but I genuinely think it would be difficult for someone not familiar with the group to not like at least bits of one album. I'm not saying that you'd like the whole discography or you'd want to like listen to numerous records, but there are at least a few songs that you'll be able to find that you'd enjoy. I
agree, yeah.
To answer your question, the way I think about their albums is if I was inviting someone round for dinner on a date, you know,
Here we go.
This is extended analogy. You know, you obviously want to make sure you got the mood right. So you've been slaving away in the kitchen, you know, cooking. Maybe you bought a nice bottle of wine to look sophisticated. Maybe a cheeky candle, that kind of thing. Yep. I think in that environment, Dots and Loops, Cobra and Phases, Sound Dust, ideal music. They're going to cut the mustard. They're warm. They're a little bit different. This is strange. What's this?
Yeah.
If I'm cooking for myself and I'm in a mood where I want to just turn the music up dead loud, I'm probably going to go for something a little bit more abrasive and play Peng or Emperor Tomato Ketchup. That's where my brain's at with Stereolab.
I really like that analogy. Yeah, there's there's the date music Stereolab, and there's the kind of by
rocking
yourself
out Stereolab.
Rocking out. Oh mate, put something dead loud on and just rock out. Right, I'm gonna force the issue here. Let's try and answer this question. Which is their best album, and is it Dots and Loops? Can you get a definitive answer from you, Ollie, on what that best one is?
I'm going Emperor Tomato Ketchup. It's got the raw metallic beat from early albums, but they're really starting to experiment with synths. I think the interplay between Sadier and Mary is top notch. Combo of heavy, proggy tracks and cheerful pop songs. That's the best for me. What were you saying?
I'm going to make another really inappropriate analogy. I think if you were to make like a political spectrum of their albums, then Emperor Tomato Ketchup is like centre left, Dots and Loops is centre right. The middle ground being, you know, those kind of two albums occupy that middle ground. If you prefer one or the other, I would not fault you either way. I would personally go with Dots and Loops, but I can see why Emperor Tomato Ketchup might get that vote from someone else. So those two for me are the top two.
We've gone analogy mad today, haven't we?
We have gone analogy mad.